Hi everyone, welcome to Let's Talk Cafe, and I've got my buddy here all the way from Ontario, Canada, Jory. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, how are you?
Well done, man. Thanks for coming in. It's what time is it there? About 6, 7 in the evening?
7 p.m. Yep.
7 p.m. on a Friday. Here it is. It's Saturday morning in Melbourne, in Australia. It's a beautiful day. It's winter, but it's a beautiful sunny day. It was a bit cold this morning, but it's looking like a fantastic weekend. Lovely to have you here, mate. But before we start our conversation, I just want to talk a little bit about to our audience about what is Let's Talk and what is Let's Talk Cafe. So, Let's Talk is a journey I went through my mental health as well, and we'll talk a bit about that later. But Let's Talk is two acronyms. Let's stands for letting everyone talk safely, and that's exactly what Let's Talk Cafe is. It's about opening up, about sharing your thoughts and your journey with mental health, and letting everyone talk safely. And talk are the 4 strategies of this program that we run, and it's tell, acknowledge, listen, and keep in touch. So see the telltale signs in someone, including yourself, acknowledge them when they open up, and then definitely listen and keep in touch. So we'll go through those strategies as we go through our story with Jory, who's here all the way from Canada to share his story. So thank you once again, Jory. And I want to introduce
Thanks
Jory.
for having me.
You're welcome. Now, Jory has an interesting career, 13 years career in motorsports, marketing and public relations. He's a 3-time winner in drag racing, of all sports, where he and his racer gets up to speeds, wait for it, 260 Ks an hour in less than 8.5 seconds, over 400 distance wall, mate. That's what I say, getting there in a hurry.
100%. Yeah.
Jory had a changing career in the last 6 years or so, and he's a professional ice hockey coach. And this is what you do right now, I believe, Jory.
Yep.
But things were a little bit different when he was at 35. Jory began facing probably his toughest and most challenging period in his life, a major battle with mental health that included severe anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation that would linger for many years. Now he's 41 with a ton of research and personal development behind him, and definitely ahead of him. And he says that I can say that I found a new level of alignment and joy in life. Wow, I want to hear this. Jory is a mental health advocate and founder of Lift the Visor, which we will talk about as well. And today, Jory is going to join me to share his story about how facing his mental health head-on has led him to greater alignment with his purpose. Welcome to Let's Talk Cafe, Jory.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Fantastic. Let's start from the start, mate. Tell us what happened.
I made a huge career decision. I decided I was going to go chase this hockey coaching career that I had always wanted to, but had always talked myself out of. Looking back, I recognize a lot of the things that were going on as far as negative self-talk and feeling judgment from the outside and a whole bunch of things that I really shouldn't have been focused on, but I was. And so aside from all those, I still made the decision to leave my career behind in motorsports marketing and go chase this dream of being a professional hockey coach full-time. That was bliss and torment all at the same time for a year, because I was so excited to go and do this thing that I had always wanted to do. And the prospect of success was fantastic. I had landed this great opportunity at the University of Waterloo. And it took a couple months of being there for the old programming, I like to call it, that comes in and kind of takes over, starts to run the show. And that led to anxiety that I didn't know at the time was anxiety. So pacing in my apartment for 40 minutes to an hour at a time, back and forth from room to room, unable to decide whether I was going to have a shower, what I was going to make for dinner, what I was going to wear, whether I would go get groceries or not. And that continued for, the better part of the rest of the season, anxiety. And it was consistent week to week, same things occurring again and again. So there was a pattern, but I didn't recognize it at the time. I had no previous knowledge of mental health, so to speak, other than it being a catchphrase for things that other people had gone through.
Yeah.
So I went from anxiousness to depression near the end of the season, thinking that I had been defeated by this opportunity that I wanted so bad, that I wasn't welcome there, that I was a failure, all of the negative self-talk that sort of comes along. And I wasn't any of those things, but I felt that way. And so I actually resigned from coaching with the team, and went back to live with my parents in their basement at 36 years old at this point. And I was only just beginning my mental health journey, where I slipped into deeper depression, and then the suicidal ideations started, and that was consistent, 2 to 3 times a day for 2 or 3 months until I started to be able to access therapy and start to come out from underneath those negative beliefs and self-talk, and start to sort of figure out what it was that was pushing me down these paths and creating this really bad situation. So that's most of the journey to the point that I started to get treatment for what I was experiencing.
So looking back, now you started talking about, being a coach, even going back to your racing days. And what were some of the telltale signs, now looking back, that you sort of noticed about your mental health?
Huge moment in my racing career, actually. First event of the 2016 season. We had been struggling the year previous with the car. We had some gremlins in it that we just couldn't find, and it was affecting our ability to be successful. And I'm the son of a multi Hall of Fame inducted dad in this sport. So I have pressure on me, or I placed pressure on myself. And going to the track wasn't enjoyable anymore for me. I had placed all this pressure on myself to perform. And on top of that, we had issues with a race car that was being temperamental and not providing what we needed in order to have success. And I simply just lost my mind one day at the racetrack, absolutely went off, yelling. Not like me to do that. I would have a bit of a temper in the past, but I lost it. And this was immediately after, or shortly after, I had resigned from coaching at the University of Waterloo. So that particular moment, although it didn't push me right at that moment to get help, I think that's the moment that people around me really recognize that there's something more going on. And as is the case with a lot of people who experience mental health, everyone around me knew before I knew. And so that moment at the track it took me, almost 2 complete calendar years to come to grips with what I had done, be okay with my new self and the path I was on in order to return, and feel that I could do that on my terms and maintain the new level of focus and calm that I wanted to bring to that environment. So, yeah.
So you talked about your family, your friends, the people around you that sort of, did they notice the telltale signs? Did they, I'm sure they don't notice when you were angry and upset, but, did they come to you? Did they approach you? Did they speak to you?
No. I would say in my family, we have like a don't tell kind of, or keep everything bundled up and just kind of push through it. And people come by their beliefs or their values or their thought processes honestly. And I don't hold any of that against anyone. But I think that knowing that prevented me from getting help sooner. So I sat in my parents' basement and ruminated on these really negative thoughts for a lot longer than I probably would have if somebody had come forward and said, hey, we recognize that you're really struggling, and is there anything we can do to help you, in a non-combative, supportive type way versus a like get your SHIT together kind of a way, which is a big differentiating point in a lot of people's mental health journeys. So, you know, I didn't really have that. I just kind of sat there and had to dig through all of that emotion and all those things on my own.
Yeah. So you had people around you, and I'm sure what you talked about, your dad's fame and his surroundings and his history and your friends. So you had the connection around you, but no one really came up to you and asked you, about your behavior, so to speak.
I was a good actor too, Jeffa. Like I could go out with my friends and they had no clue, I don't think, that I was going through these things. It was an interesting period in my life where you could really convince yourself that you were okay, because you could find it in those moments where we were doing things that were, we'd always done. Yeah.
And would it have made a difference? Would it have made a difference if your family and friends approached you in the early days and got you to see them? Would that help?
I think knowing the relationship I had with my parents, it probably wouldn't have gone well, just because of our way of dealing with things within internally in our family. But I think had one of my most trusted friends, somebody that I knew cared about me in a different way and wanted better for me, had have said something, I think I probably would have been responsive to that. But it's hard to know in hindsight. Maybe I did have to dig through all of those emotions on my own and really get to that low point to come out on the other side. So, yeah.
I just want to acknowledge you. I really want to acknowledge you for your courage and openness to come and share this story with us. I know it's not easy to talk and look back at, what's happened, but, your story is going to resonate with lots of people out there who's listening. And I'm hoping that it's going to encourage people to talk about their concerns, whether it be mental health or just, I'm feeling mad, or I'm feeling frustrated, or feeling, sad. They're normal human feelings. I hope that it really encourages people to come and talk to someone they care about, but also, build that village. There are people out there who sees those telltale signs. And a lot of people ask me, how do we approach someone? How do we approach someone to ask if they're, doing okay? And, my answer is really simple. Use the stuff that it's been given to you already, your eyes, your ears, your heart, and your brain, to see, to hear, to feel, and you really know the telltale signs and ask, hey, Jory, I see that you're a bit frustrated, would you like to talk? Like that.
And I share this a lot with people, is if you think of someone or you're thinking of them, just reach out, send them a note, say hi. Don't have an expectation of a response or what response you might get. Just reach out and say, hey, because there's probably a reason that came through in your senses and said that person needs to hear from you today. So I think it's the same kind of idea when you're witnessing someone who's struggling. Don't have an expectation of how that interaction is going to go. Just simply acknowledge that, hey, I see it looks like you're having a tough time. Do you want to talk? They might say no, but now they know the door's open for that opportunity with somebody who cares.
Absolutely. And that's what exactly that what somebody, they know that somebody cares and they're with them. They might not open up or ready to open up straight away, but it's a matter of knowing that somebody cares about my stuff. The second strategy of the Let'sTALK program is acknowledge. How important was it for you to acknowledge yourself that you had a mental health
When that moment came that I walked up the stairs at my parents' house and stood in front of them and cried and said, I need help. It was a huge relief that I finally got to that point, that I was brave enough, but broken enough to step out and say, it's time, and had no idea really how that journey would go. And I think that's part of the hesitation for a lot of people, is not knowing, and the fear of it. And once I did that, it relieved a whole bunch of the pressure around the judgment that I felt that wasn't real. Nobody was really judging me. They wanted the best for me. And so when I stepped out of that space and just said, it's time, it relieved a huge amount of pressure. Yeah.
I love what you said, brave enough and broken enough. I love what you said. How much broke do we need to be?
It's different for everyone, I think. And that's part of the message that we need to change, or the conversation we need to have about mental health, is that it looks different for everyone. And I always say to people, my mental health, I'm so in tune with myself now that the conversation I want to have about it, I'm very open all the time. But I might not be wanting to have that conversation at 2 p.m, but I might be ready by 4. And so, and this is the thing, is everybody's going to experience that differently. It might be 4 days before somebody else is ready to have that conversation. And that's okay. That's perfectly acceptable. If we create that supportive environment where people know they can come to get it when they need it, and they won't be judged, they'll just be viewed as a person who needs some help, we're going to have a way better success rate with people surviving mental health challenges. Yeah.
Fantastic. And it's really building that environment of psychological safety for people to grow. It's like a flower, you can put the flower on the plant on the ground, but the flower will come when it's ready, when the environment is ready, when there's sunshine, when the soil conditions are right. It's a bit like us, we'll talk when we're ready to talk. But what's really important for the flower to survive is to have the right conditions of soil and environment.
100%.
Yeah. How important was it for you to be acknowledged by others, including family and friends?
I think, it's an interesting question, because I've done so much self-reflection and personal development that it's hard for me to put myself in other people's shoes, because I know how unique everyone's experience in this world is. And so, just knowing that I was going on a journey that allowed me to release all of the things that I thought others thought about me, judgment. It wasn't necessarily the people around me giving me that support, as it was my view changing about how they supported me. That was the biggest change, I think.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. And sometimes all people need to know is that they're acknowledged, they're validated, that they have a mental health condition, and that there are people around them to listen. Talking about listening can be the toughest gig in most, even in the best of times. How well did you listen to yourself, and how is it different now?
I was terrible at it. I had no clue. I had never done it before in my life. I literally lived off of what's the next thing? What's the ego telling me I need to do? What's the outside world telling me I need to do? And what I learned through my journey with mental health was how to listen to myself, how to get into alignment with my deeper, and I call it my gut. People call it their soul. People call it the universe. Whatever the thing is that's below that ego level, where it's, you're always worried what other people are thinking. You never think you're good enough. All of those things. Yeah. Once I was able to get below that and start discovering that alignment with my gut, it was huge. Like I could not live my life, or I couldn't imagine living my life without that. Now, some days it's annoying because you just can't, you can't just go with the ego, but it's definitely, it was a game changer. Like I started to unravel the puzzle that was me when I started to really listen to myself deeper than the ego telling me that I was a piece of junk. Yeah.
And that's how you felt when this journey first started?
I felt I was mad at the world. I was mad at myself for what I hadn't accomplished, for the lack of commitment that I had shown in different things, for the lack of respect I had shown to people in relationships. There was a whole lot of anger in there because, the way I understand it now, I just didn't make any of those decisions from a good place. I made them based on what I thought everyone else expected of me. And when it wasn't in alignment with me, I never had the follow through. I never had the enjoyment. I never had any of the things that you really want out of life. I was just going through the motions, more or less. Yeah.
In your darkest days, 35 and then in the years that preceded that, who listened to you in your darkest day?
Who really listened to me was somebody that I didn't expect to really listen to me at all. Was a friend, an acquaintance more than anything, who I had actually been her boss at one point. And I don't remember exactly how I got led down the path of reaching out to her. But she became my biggest ally. She had experienced some things in life that made her awareness of what I was going through greater than anyone else around me. And she was just always there whenever I needed somebody to talk to. I remember my first panic attack where I was in a ball on the floor and I had no idea what was going on. And I told Siri to call her, and she talked me through it. And those are the things that you just can't plan or make into reality. It just has to happen naturally. And for whatever reason, she became a huge ally. And I found others, along the way who were understanding if I needed a night off from something that we had planned, or who just would talk through things with me, maybe couldn't feel it the same way I was feeling it, but they would sit there and talk through it with me. So I am incredibly grateful for a person coming through my life that I really had no intention at the time that we came together in life of ever having that role in my future. Yeah.
Talk through it. She talked through your anxiety, your panic attack. Tell me what happened in you when she talked through it. Tell me what happened to calm you down, or whatever that happened.
I didn't calm down immediately. I still experienced the panic attack, but now I had a name for it. I could attach something to it that was going on. And then, she just stayed on the phone. We didn't even talk really. And we just went through this process of being together in that moment. And it gave me, hope that I could attach some knowledge to it, because at this point in my journey, I had learned that I can learn and grow into a different person. I can learn and change those beliefs and values that I have in order to have more success. And so just putting a name to it and having somebody there who I knew had my back in a way in that moment, it didn't end it, but it made it more bearable, where the thoughts, like during that panic attack, it was one way out, essentially, was the thought process until I talked to her. Yeah.
I always say it's just a simple conversation that can be the difference between an end or a beginning. And sounds like, for you, she made that path a beginning to something greater, and look at you now. And I always look at listening, because people say, oh, listening is really tough. I haven't got time to listen, or I'm not a good listener, or, I suck at it, or whatever. And I always think, well, just imagine if you're bogged, if you're bogged in the mud, in your car, it's a winter day, it's raining. What would you do when you're bogged? I don't know what happens in Canada if you're bogged in mud, mate. What would you do?
If you keep revving the engine and spinning the tires, you're only going to go deeper.
That's right.
So you got to get out of the car, assess the situation.
Yeah.
Walk around it a few times, maybe ask your friend who's there with you, what's their opinion on it. And then figure out a strategy to work your way out of that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And in most cases, Jory, your friend would say, oh, look, I'll do a tow. I'll tow you out in the mud into dry ground, and that's all your friend did in that situation. You're panicking, basically, threw you the tow line just to get you to dry ground. She didn't take you home, cook you a meal, put you back into bed or whatever.
No.
What she did is took you from the mud to dry ground so that you could keep going another day and another month, another year, and so on and so forth. So it's so important for people who are listening is, listening doesn't have to be this huge task. It could be someone, as Jory said, just sitting next to you and just being there, being, when you're bogged, just helping you to get to dry ground. And you know what, if they can't, let's get a few other people involved so that we can help to get them into dry ground.
Yep.
Tell us now, and I just want to talk about how important it is for family and friends to keep in touch, which is the fourth strategy of the Let'sTALK program. It's about, while you were going through your journey, how important was it for you to keep in touch with friends and family? And did it happen?
Yeah, I think my friend group narrowed significantly, but the ones that did remain were in constant contact. So once a day, a text, hey, how are you? Or what's going on today? Going both ways. I think family wise, it's tougher. And some of the things that I've learned on my journey about how deeply rooted and how the brain works to create beliefs and programming that kind of run automatically in our subconscious. The evolution just never occurred where I was able to have a conversation necessarily about it with my family, but there's support there. I can still feel that. And so that's, to me, that's all that matters, is that I know that there's support there if I need it. And really that's a game changer when you know that, because you could do a lot of work on your own when you feel supported. If you do end up falling backwards a little bit, which is fairly common. I mean, I did it a number of times on my mental health journey.
Let's talk about keep in touch and what you're doing right now with Lift the Visor. Tell us a little bit about Lift the Visor and your aspiration for really supporting people with mental health issues.
Yeah, so Lift the Visor was actually a combination of two ideas. One being my involvement in the motorsports community, that blow up that I had in 2016 at the track, and I quit on the spot. And not feeling supported in that environment, even though that wasn't the truth about the situation. I just didn't know any better. And so it was that thought process on the motorsports side, combined with an initiative that exists in the hockey community called Lift the Mask, which is for hockey goalies. And the gentleman who created that was kind enough to let me kind of feed off of the idea and create something specifically for the motorsports community to address mental health and how it affects us. And in a male dominated sport, there's a lot of stuff to unpack there about why people are experiencing what they're experiencing, and how we can just change that conversation, create a more supportive environment. And so Lift the Visor is, at its simplest form is a blog. So I can have others share their stories similar to what we're doing here today, so that other people can come along and find a story that resonates for them when they're struggling. And the other component being something at the track that people can recognize, even if they never say anything or never talk to anyone about it. They will feel supported in that environment. And that's decals or stickers that racers are putting on their cars. I think to date, in the last almost 3 months I've been doing it, there's well over 250 stickers out there already. And we haven't even raced in Ontario yet. So it's, and I know the power that would have had in that moment when I was really struggling. If I had known that there was some kind of support, it might have changed the outcome of that situation. And so that's really what it's about. And then if somebody needs someone to talk to, they know where to go, because there's a decal on that race car that says, I am comfortable with the mental health conversation. I might not have the answers, but I'm comfortable. And that's important. Yeah.
Tell me about mental health and men and suicide and men. Now, I'll give you a stat in Australia. Australia, relatively smaller country to Canada, roughly 25 million people. 9 people die by suicide every single day in Australia. Today there'll be 9, tomorrow there'll be 9. And the alarming statistic is 7 out of that 9 are men. What's it like there in Canada for you?
It's incredibly similar. I think that the theme in society similar to ours is that showing any kind of emotion beyond like anger is weakness. And that's part of the motorsports community. The stories that have been shared both from the female and male perspective in that community is one of believing you have to put a front on, that you are strong, that you are tough, that you are you don't show weakness because your competitors will take advantage of that. And that's just not true. I've shown that, and others have too. And so we have a huge amount of work to do as men having this conversation. And I know it's happening. Yeah. But it doesn't seem to be having the positive effect yet that we hope it will. But I think that when I talk to others, I'm deep in this world, and you are too, in the mental health space. So we're having these conversations on a consistent basis. But this just isn't the norm yet. It's not the norm in the world of men. So the more we can have these conversations, the more they can see two people who they might think never would have experienced anything like that, speaking up and just saying, I went through this. It's all good. You know what? We can get you through this too. Or get you help to make you have more better days. And that's all it is. And it's just going to take more conversation, better supports in the United States for sure. Even in Canada, when I went to my doctor, my MD, to ask for help, I turned down the offer of medication. I just, for whatever reason inside of me, didn't feel like that was the path to success for me. And so I turned it down, but I had no financial support then to go and get therapy. And I also had to wait, I think it was two months or 8, like 6 to 8 weeks to actually get the support I needed. And so that's a huge one too, because when you're very fresh into a mental health battle and you don't really understand what it is you're encountering on a daily basis, you need someone to talk to. Or you need that support network that's going to get you moving in the right direction. And we just don't have that yet either. But all of this, it's not to beat on anything. It's just, that's the reality of where we're at. And we are moving the dial. We are having these conversations and making it better for people. Just like you said, not fast enough for me or you, because I don't want to see another person leave this planet that could have been helped.
When it comes to also, men and suicide, and look, suicide affects everyone. It affects the whole community. Vulnerability. The word vulnerability, is usually, in a macho world is seen as a weakness. And there's a beautiful quote by Brené Brown that says, weakness, it definitely sounds like the truth and feels like courage. We know truthfulness and courage is not always comfortable, but it's never a weakness, right?
Yep. Agreed, 100%. I believe people who share their emotions from their deepest alignment are actually, they're the strongest people, because they've found how to navigate all of the things that is part of being human.
Yeah,
it's not human to not experience emotion other than anger when you're mad that something didn't go your way. So yeah, totally. Those are the people who are strongest, are the ones who are comfortable.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, emotion, the oldest feeling, it's actually kept us alive. It kept the species going. It's emotion that keeps us here. It's about that managing the emotion. We talk about emotional intelligence,
yep.
But it's really understanding and managing these emotions. But one of the ways to manage the emotion, number one, is talk about it. Talk about it, observe it, and name it. Because if you don't name it, you can't tame it.
100%.
Tell me, for those who are listening to you, who are going through a similar situation to you, Jory, what's your message to them?
The first and foremost, be kind to yourself, because there's a lot of stuff that you just don't know yet, that you couldn't possibly know, and without experiencing it or being taught it. So don't be hard on yourself that you can't navigate this on your own. That's just not how this goes. You're going to need help. That's okay. There's lots of people who are willing to be that support network for you. Secondly, I think it's important that we understand that everybody's journey is different. So for me, it was walking into that doctor's office and saying no to medication for whatever reason. I don't know, but that might be someone else's best path to success initially or long term, and that's not for anyone to tell you. That's for you to feel and navigate on your own. I think that we get really stuck in a small, narrow tunnel, and we want one thing to work for us. And we kind of come by that honestly, right? Like you're told, pick a mate, stick with them for life. Pick a career, stick with it for life. All of these things that kind of guide us down that path. Yeah. And mental health just isn't like that. It's not one fix for all of the things that are going on. And if we could have more people understand that and feel comfortable with the journey that's about to begin, there would be a lot more comfort within them when they start to experience it, because they already know what they're in for a little bit. So I think those two things, be kind to yourself and be prepared for a journey that is not just going to be like, here's a book, read it, you're better. That's not how it's going to go. Right. Yep.
I love your advice. And Jory, 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with OCD. So obsessive compulsive disorder. It's an anxiety disorder. And which kind of then created a bit of depression as well, because you tend to suppress it, you tend to hide it, you're accumulated by it. 20 years ago, mental health wasn't the thing that we talked about, and obviously things have got much, much better. You and I are talking about this now, but we don't want to stick around for 20 years to talk about it. We want to talk about it now, right?
Yeah.
Make that environment and climate safe for people to talk about it. I look back to my OCD and I reflect back and say, you know what? It's the best thing that ever happened to me. It's the best thing that ever happened to me, because without it, I won't be here. Helping others and really yourself. Look at you. You want to make a difference in the world. Through your own journey, your own struggle with mental illness. We have a lot of something common, man. We've gone through the journey, and we want to make a difference.
100%.
Yeah.
The journey is everything. Yeah.
And self-compassion. So not 17 years ago, I started a charity called CCC Foundation, or Courage, Compassion, Commitment Foundation. And they're the 3 C's that was my Prozac. There were three C's, courage to get out of bed, compassion for myself, let's not be so hard on yourself, Jatha, and commitment to, finish what you started. They're the three C's. And, today we talk about Let's Talk being, something that encourages people to talk openly about this before they escalate. It doesn't have to escalate. There are somebody, just like Jory, you found someone, somebody you never expected to be there for you. There is someone, you're never alone. There is someone there out there who will listen, who's gone through a similar journey to you, and definitely will help you. Jory, what's your message to family and friends who have someone who they suspect might have a mental illness, or that they know, they're living with someone with mental illness? What's your message to family and friends?
I think it's the exact same thing that I would share with somebody who's experiencing it. Is if you are a person who's in a support network for someone else, whether they know they're experiencing mental health or not, is be kind, have compassion. Don't come at it from a place of they need to get their act together, or you're doing something to me by being this way, because that's not helpful. That's not collaborative. That's not the direction we need to go. And kindness rules. I've learned that. If we're kind to each other, good things are going to happen. If we're mean to each other, we might get an okay result, but are we going to enjoy it? Probably not. And so that, and then obviously understanding
Can I
that.
ask you, from your experience, kindness, I love kindness. One of my favorite.
It's what I live by.
How do you generate kindness? How do you cultivate it?
I think a lot of it for me is gratitude. So I usually start my day and end my day. I don't stick to a specific script anymore. I did very rigidly when I was, first experiencing mental health, because I found security and direction in it. But now I just let it kind of flow the way it naturally does. But I think that gratitude for me is the biggest thing that allows me to perpetuate or bring kindness to my world when I go and interact with it. And it's just, like, that's my number one thing that I tell everyone that I'm about. That's what I'm here for, is to put kindness into this world. And I do my best to do that. I'm still, growing and learning and eliminating some of that old programming and negative self-talk. It's still there, but I'm working on it. So I do my best, and I'm, kind to myself on those days that I can't do it at the level that I want to do it. But it's gratitude for me is the number one thing that drives the kindness that I can put out into the world.
I love it. I have a saying: gratitude grounds us for greatness. Really grounds us for greatness. And
absolutely.
That grounding, and I always say, when people say, oh, these horrible things are happening to me, and that's fine. You need to acknowledge horrible things are happening to us. But I always say to them, when fantastic things are happening to you, do you ever look down to the ground and say, thank you, ground, for holding me through these wonderful things? Okay. And I'll tell you what, when you're going through some bad stuff, look to the ground and say, you know what? Has the ground left you? No, it's still there holding you. So be grateful for the great things that are happening every single time in your life. And there are amazing things that happen to you. So I love your answer. Gratitude is really a grounding for greatness. You mentioned to me that you're really passionate about nature. And doing something for kids in nature. Tell us a little bit of that.
Well, so my evolution as a human through my mental health journey has taken me from person who was broken by coaching, something that I thought I really wanted to do. And I did want to do it at my deepest, level in alignment, but I didn't know how. I didn't have the tools yet. And so being broken down, building myself back up in that same space, getting opportunity, people welcoming me back, and just evolving the definition of what I want out of life. And so for me, I found nature to be incredibly powerful during my journey. It was something that I loved as a kid, kind of lost as an adult, kind of got into that like rat race, type mentality. And I rediscovered it when I started going through my mental health challenges. And I realized how deep that connection is. So I had it as a child, and it was still there. It never went away. And it was a comforting, calming, really great space to be in. And so combining that with my coaching, which is the majority of it, I coach at the university. So I coach young adults who are, essentially playing at the highest level they'll play at. But I also coach a ton of kids from 7 years old up to, 21 years old. And the thing that I love about that is that they're all so unique, and I get this opportunity to like contribute to their journey and how they're going to go. But there are restrictions, time, money, and the expectation of a performance. And so for me, being able to evolve outside of those confines of those limitations is a huge part of where I'm headed personally. And I think that, combining an environment where we have that mindset, but we also have nature to bring it all together. And when we do struggle down the road, if it's a kid who gets to some point similar to where I was or where you were or whatever, they'll have that grounding force of nature that I had as well, and great memories to go along with it. And so that's, for me, that's just my vision. There's tons of ways to do this that others would find as well. But for me, those are the things that really resonate. And so that's the direction I'm headed, is creating and directing a kid's summer camp in the wilderness.
I totally agree with you. Nature, nature is part and parcel of us. We are part of nature. Nature is part of us. And the more distance we have from nature, and all these things are coming up about mental health and other elements, we need to go back to and be really grounded with nature. I totally agree with you. In fact, we're doing an event for World Suicide Prevention Day, which is 10th of September. And I'm going to invite you. Maybe you can do this in Ontario as well. It's called Let's Talk and Walk. Let's Talk and Walk, right? So basically, it's about getting a bunch of people. Obviously, we need to worry about restrictions and COVID-19 these days. But if it's safe to do so, let's go for a walk. Let's go for a talk and really talk and enjoy the nature and talk about our mental well-being as well. So I'll let everyone know when that is.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to point out behind you too, there was two people who just hugged, and it looked so fantastic because we can't really do that here right now. So just seeing those two people embrace each other was amazing behind you.
Fantastic. Hey, Jory, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. You've been vulnerable. You've spoken the truth with courage. Okay, that's one vulnerability, right? And people listening to your story, I am sure it's going to make a huge difference for those who are living with similar situations. If they can resonate with your story, then they definitely get help. So anyone who is out there who's listening, who are feeling down and depressed or anxious, reach out to someone you can trust. Reach out to your family, reach out to a friend. As Jory said, it could be the person you never expected to help you. If you're still struggling to do that, please reach out to your helplines in your country, wherever you are. If you're in Australia, it's Lifeline on 13, 11, 14. There's so many other services as well, Beyond Blue, Kids Helpline and so forth. So, Jory, thank you so much for sharing your story. All the best with your great initiatives, mate. And we will definitely keep in touch here.
100%. Look forward to it. I'm excited about keeping in touch. We're moving the conversation forward and helping people, and that's what it's all about.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Tomorrow, have a great weekend.
Yeah.
I'm having a great weekend right now.
You're already there.
So everyone listening, have a great one, guys, and don't forget, keep talking.